This is Eileen Griffin with the Heartland View from the Heartland Daily News, bringing you information and analysis about public policy stories that affect your life, your health, your freedom, and the nation's economy. So what's the news this week? Well, there's no shortage of public policy news. So we're going to cover a couple stories that have been high on the radar, and they're from 3 different states. We're going to start with that, 3 states with information and updates, and then we're going to go to our feature story. So all these 3 states happen to be in the West. It's just coincidence. But we're going to start with a story out of Wyoming, and this is a story about discrimination. So there's a Wyoming rancher suing the Biden administration and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, claiming racial discrimination. There's a federal loan program, this forgiveness program, that's part of the COVID relief. And so this rancher, her name is Liesl Carpenter. She's 29. She owns this property out in Big Laramie Valley. And she'd previously taken out a loan. It's a 2,400-acre ranch. So she'd taken out a loan to try to maintain the family farm. And then COVID hit. And that obviously added some financial burdens to the other things she's dealing with. So when COVID hit, she thought she'd apply for this loan forgiveness program that was available. But when she went to do that, she was told she was ineligible because of her race. So Carpenter has filed a lawsuit claiming that the American Rescue Plan is discriminatory. She's ineligible solely because the color of her skin is white. So she's hired the Associate General Counsel for Mountain States Legal Foundation, William Trackman, and he says, quote, "Making skin color the basis of a government benefit is not only unconstitutional, it's also morally wrong. One simply cannot promote racial justice by perpetuating racial injustice. The way to end discrimination is to stop discriminating," end quote. That makes a lot of sense. So we'll keep you posted on that one. She's got the lawsuit filed, and we'll see how that goes. Now we're going to move on to Oregon. Always interesting things happening in Oregon, or at least in Portland. But this is actually a story about the other side of the state, the side of the state you don't hear about very often. We've got several counties in the state of Oregon that are wanting to leave the state of Oregon. So Eastern Oregon, a group of them, the group of the counties, have voted to try to secede from Oregon and join Idaho. They feel that they'd be much more welcome in Idaho. They'd be much more politically aligned. They'd have opportunities to have their voice heard and their vote counted, which currently in Oregon, a lot of times they just don't feel like they're heard. And the reason for that is, of course, like several states, particularly in the West, the states are driven by the urban core. So in Oregon, it's driven by Portland. And Portland, I think, as we all know, has a few things going on in that city. So the rest of the state wants out, and they'd like to join Idaho. So these 5 counties, and it's interesting, just to kind of put it in perspective, give you some context in terms of their political leanings. The state of Oregon as a whole basically voted for Joe Biden. So as a whole, the state of Oregon was 56% for President Biden. But those 5 counties that are looking to leave Oregon voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, and as much as 69% or higher. So there's clearly a divide between the philosophies and the ideas of these 2 groups of people. And while this is divided obviously is political, there's also, it's more than that. It's economical, and it's philosophical, and it's cultural, and there's all these different things that are just very different between this group of the city center urbanites in Portland and the rural group that's out in the west and the eastern side of the state. So the values and the vision are just different, similar to other western states like California and Washington. Washington state has eastern Washington, which is also very rural and conservative. But of course, the politics are driven by Seattle, the urban center. California has an inland empire, has everything that's not on the coast is inland, and there's a lot of different viewpoints there. But again, those votes are never really heard because the overwhelming numbers in the urban centers. So in Oregon, these counties are just attempting to secede. They've had enough. They want out. They're ready to go. So we'll see. They'd like to escape Portland crazy. Certainly we can understand why they might want to do that. Will they succeed? We don't know. But we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll keep you informed. Now we're going to move on. Since we've mentioned California, let's talk a little bit about California. There's no shortage of things ever happening in California. There's always something to talk about in California. So California, was always known as being the state of hope and opportunity. There was always great things, the Golden State. And a lot of people grew up dreaming about California and moving to California and surf and sand and all the wonderful things. But now it's become very difficult just to live on a day-to-day basis. But Edward Ring says, you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. So the California Political Review ran an article by Edward Ring talking about how to fix this. Well, how can we fix California? There's a lot of people that can tell you what's wrong with it. We know that for everything that's going on, even just the basic essentials, to purchase a home, to rent a home, to pay tuition, to pay for gas, to put gas in your car, just the electricity, water is a problem in California. Californians pay the highest taxes in America. They endure the most hostile business climate. And they pay the highest taxes in addition to all the regulatory burdens. So they've got both things. They've got the burdens, they've got the regulation, they've got the taxes, they've got the expenses, and they're losing a lot of services, such as simple things like water. Public schools are not doing particularly well in California. Crime off the charts in a lot of the cities in California, absolutely out of control. They have fires every single year. Forest fires, you can set your watch by it. So you've got rationing water, you got forest fires, you've got rolling blackouts, you've got all these things. So the quality of life for middle-class Californians has been deteriorating for years. So what's the solution? Well, we could always have better leaders. That's always an option. We know we could fix California if we had leaders that were looking outside of themselves and outside of their own best interest to the best interest of Californians on a day-to-day basis. Those kinds of leaders aren't always easy to come by. So if you can't find leaders, what else does California have? California has something else. California has the initiative process. So if you aren't going to get good quality leaders that are going to put Californians first, individual Californians themselves can put something on the ballot to help fix their problems. So we have this opportunity for a recall of Gavin Newsom, and a lot of people are putting a lot of hope in the next leader. But looking beyond that, there's a lot of other ways to solve this problem. Californians can take ownership, take responsibility, put some more alternatives, all these initiatives on the ballot, come up with alternatives to some of these problems, come up with solutions. This is a process that exists, and it's an opportunity for all Californians to fix their future. Californians can and will realize that ballot initiatives can improve their lives. They just need to start making better use of that tool that California has available to them and help them do what their own political leaders don't seem to be able or willing to do to fix California and bring it back to the glory of the golden state that it once was. It can happen. It can. People just have to care enough and work hard and make it happen. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our feature story. This is a story from Michelle Malkin. And like I said, this is interesting. It's a little concerning. So I want to share this with you. And in terms of the bigger picture, I'm going to give you kind of the overview of it. So again, the details are on heartlanddailynews.com. And Michelle writes a terrific story. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it, and particularly in terms of COVID, but the overall concept of this. So what's happening is there's an effort out there to try to get children vaccinated. So this COVID vaccine campaign is targeting these 25 million American children aged 12 to 17, minors. As of last week, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, more than 2 million 12 to 15-year-olds and 2.5 million 16 to 17-year-olds had received at least one COVID-19 vaccine. That's about 12% and 31% of adolescents in each respective group. Now, many children are not getting vaccinated. Why? Because their parents don't want them to. So some parents have said, they remain skeptical, they at least want to watch, they've got some concerns, so they're watching this vaccine before they just authorize someone to vaccinate their children. Now, some of the mainstream news have described this parental authority as a problem. And that should concern all of us. Since when did parental authority become a problem? So if parental authority is undermined, whether it's for COVID or any other reason, this can continue. It can set a precedent. What other decisions might the government decide they should make for parents? There are already areas we know where parents are losing control. The government's encroaching with mandates at various levels of government. After a year of COVID lockdowns, parents are speaking up and saying, this isn't right. My children have been out of school for a year. What are you doing for my children? So parents are speaking up, but it takes that parental involvement. It takes the parental authority. Who cares more about their own child than a parent? Not a government bureaucrat. So the parents need to be involved. So Malkin says she has issued warnings before about the erosion of informed consent in the dawn of the most coercive era of medical tyranny in human history, she says. There are several efforts underway to undermine parental consent, making it easier to vaccinate children without parental approval. So like other freedoms that we've lost with the excuse of COVID, this is another area we need to keep an eye on. It's an opportunity for ill intent to create a power grab. This corporate-backed, it's called Vax-Teen Ambassadors, trying to encourage and this campaign targeting these young people to get vaccinated. They're using social media. They're using TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to lure students to their events, lure them into getting these vaccines. They're giving them free pretzels, free ice cream, whatever would entice this age group to come in and get vaccinated. So Malkin writes, the COVID-19 tyrants are using children as human shields to crank up the propaganda to drive ever greater wedges between children and their parents. Unvaxxed kids are being told that their parents are responsible for misinformation, that their hesitancy is not about their own selves or their own children, it's just this misinformation they have. I think we all know teenagers can be very easily influenced. They're influenced and they've got so much pressure on them between the media and the culture, their friends, all this social media that's constantly giving them these messages. And younger children younger than teenagers, it's just too early to make these kinds of decisions, major medical decisions for themselves that could impact their future. So the idea that children should go against their parents' wishes is really dangerous. What consequences will parents have to deal with when their authority is effectively undermined? Now, this sort of seems to fit with what we've seen in other parts of our culture recently, this undermining of authority, anarchy. Where have we seen that before? So as we're seeing this all over the country in different ways, this is just another front where they're going to wage a battle. But this is a battle for our children. To take teenagers and young children and vaccinate them against their parents' wishes, that's just not right. So we've got to keep an eye on this. We've already got all kinds of problems with anarchy and a lack of respect for authority. Children as young as 12 and 13, that can't be good. So Malkin says, quote, make no mistake, this isn't a war on a pandemic. This is war on the nuclear family, end quote. So critical story, critical cultural progression and policy progressions that we should keep an eye on. We'll keep you informed. As always, please look at the rest of the details of this story and the others and many others that are on heartlanddailynews.com. You can also check out our website, heartland.org, for information on these stories, other things, information. There's white papers, there's videos, there's podcasts, there's all kinds of wonderful information at heartland.org. And of course, share us on social media, tell us that you like us, give us ideas and suggestions in the comment section. And as always, thank you for listening and have a great week.